Hi, I'm here to talk a bit about BPD, but not as a medical professional, as someone who actually suffers from BPD. First of all, BPD is not bipolar disorder. It stands for borderline personality disorder, and while some of the symptoms are similar, you experience them completely differently. I've been trying little things on TikTok, explaining little bits about what BPD is, and it seems to be really helping the people there, so I thought maybe if I created a YouTube channel or tried spreading the word elsewhere, it could help more people, because obviously not everybody is on TikTok. I'm not saying everybody's on YouTube either, but it's a place to start. I hate the stigma that goes along with BPD because it has people believing I'm some out of control monster, and yeah, sometimes I am like that. But that's not me all the time. BPD is so much more than actually just being out of control, being angry and hurting people. What most people don't realise is that BPD is not just the bad things. There's a lot of good things that come with BPD that sometimes even us sufferers don't even see. And I'm hoping to show a lot more of that and get a lot of information out on what BPD actually feels like. Not what a doctor says we feel, but what we actually feel. Like, there's this entire symptom doctors don't even talk about, and that's called splitting. Basically, one emotion consumes us, and that's the best way I can describe it without going into lots of detail. So for this first video, what I want to talk about are the main symptoms, whether they're recognised by doctors or not recognised by doctors. The ones that doctors say that we have are put into 4 categories: extreme emotions, impulsive behaviour, disturbed patterns of thinking, and unstable relationships. Going into a little bit of detail on extreme emotions, all doctors recognise that the bad emotions are extreme. But what they don't touch on is how extreme the good emotions can be as well. So what you'll constantly hear about if you look it up online is that we feel extreme anger, extreme sorrow, extreme fear, extreme guilt, everything like that. You know, that's all online. What they don't touch on is that we feel extreme amounts of love as well. If you're one of the people who is loved, as in truly loved, by someone with BPD, they love you more than anybody can ever love you in your entire life. Falling in love with BPD is pretty much like the Disney movies, like the romance movies. It's all consuming, just like the negative emotions. And sometimes even happiness can be all consuming. Something that I'll touch on in a later video is a euphoria split. And that is extreme happiness, where it feels like nothing can bring you down. But this isn't touched on by doctors. Like, that's not even mentioned. I had to find that out on my own by talking to other people with borderline personality disorder. There's not even a good explanation about it amongst us. Like, we have a few ways to explain it, but there's not really a definite explanation that completely defines it. There's just something that sounds about right, which I will discuss in another video. Going on to impulsive behaviours. Now, they say it's broken down into 2 categories. The first one is an impulse to self-harm. The second one is risky behaviours. So the self-harm one might seem like it's, all said in the title. It's not. One of the things that most people don't realise is that self-harm isn't just cutting yourself. It's any impulse or action that is designed to cause yourself harm. So it can be things like hitting your head on things. It can be things like punching a wall with the intent of hurting yourself, not just to express rage. It can be things like pulling your hair out. It can be things like burning yourself. Anything that is done with the intent to harm you classes as self-harm. And that's the thing they don't really go into when they discuss an impulse to self-harm. It's not just suicidal behaviours. It's any impulse to hurt yourself. And that's what most people don't get. Obviously, to everybody else, it looks like we're just throwing a tantrum. But that's not it. That's actually part of our mental health. It's the impulse to self-harm. The risky behaviours is pretty much explained well by doctors. It's an impulse to do anything that may be risky or hurtful to your life, but not to yourself. So it would be things like gambling a lot, excessive spending. It'd be things like having unprotected sex with strangers or having sex with a lot of people. It could be things like doing drugs. It's any behaviour that's risky that doesn't really cause harm. I mean, obviously, the alcohol, the drugs, that can cause harm, but it doesn't come under self-harming because you don't do those things to hurt yourself. You do those things to try and numb the eternal torment that people with BPD feel. And that's another thing that's not discussed a lot. The fact that BPD is one of the most painful illnesses out there. And it is excessively painful. I don't have any other way to describe it. If I'm not feeling pain from outside sources, I'm going down trains of thought that hurt me. Which comes on to the next thing, disturbing patterns of thinking. This is broken down into 3 sections if you look it up online, but I'm going to discuss it in 2. The first one is hallucinations. So people with BPD can get auditory hallucinations. Those are defined as voices that you hear outside of your head for minutes or hours at a time. This is where the 3 sections comes in. There's short periods of times where you get the auditory hallucinations, and there's prolonged times. If it's shorter, it's obviously less bad than the prolonged. But what these auditory hallucinations do is they can either sound like people you know, or they can sound terrifying. So you could hear sounds, you could hear people talking to you, even something as simple as hearing your name over and over again, even though no one's talking to you. They can also feel like instructions to harm yourself or others. So what these voices could be doing is literally telling you to kill yourself or other people. Obviously, this isn't good, but it's not something that we can control. It's something that if it happens, we need to get outside help with. And mental health professionals aren't very good at helping. They tend to just say, well, you need to deal with it until you can go to therapy or get into DBT, but don't help you actually get into therapy or DBT, because even though they recommend you to services, they know they won't take you on because of your diagnosis of BPD. Been through that many times myself. Now, the other aspect of disturbed patterns of thinking is distressing beliefs. It's very hard to describe what these distressing beliefs are because they're different for everybody. It can be things as simple as believing everybody hates you. I mean, everybody's likely had that belief at one point or another, but this is to an excessive amount. It's to the point of being unreasonable. So while normally, when you had those feelings in high school, someone could say, well, it's obviously not true because, I don't hate you. Someone with BPD would not believe that. It can go deeper than that. You can believe your family or people you live with or your boyfriend or whoever You can believe that they're trying to kill you. You can believe that they're trying to hurt you. You can believe things like there's an alien mothership out there that's coming to take you home, so, all this life stuff doesn't matter because you're going home soon. Now, these aren't all examples from my life, they're just examples from people I've spoken to with BPD, and it just gets the point across what distressing beliefs are. These are a major sign that you're becoming more unwell and you need help. And there's lots of places you can get that help. You can go to an emergency room or an urgent care centre. You can ring a helpline or a crisis line. You can talk to a therapist. You can start looking for services that will accept you with BPD. Coming across with this idea that mental health professionals aren't very helpful because I'm English. I live in the UK. The NHS is severely underfunded, and I am not blaming any of the mental health professionals that I have seen in the past and they haven't helped me. I'm blaming the lack of funding and the lack of training. I want to get that across now because, some of them have been lovely, they just haven't been able to help me. And that's not their fault. If you live elsewhere in the world, you might be able to find help somewhere. But yeah, if you're having distressing beliefs, you need help. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is unstable relationships. The main thing with this is that any relationship with BPD is unstable. It doesn't matter if it's a romantic one, a professional one, a friendship, family, even something as simple as a carer. Any relationship can be unstable. This is because people with BPD have black or white thinking. And this means that either the person in question, so let's say it's a romantic partner, your partner, they're either amazing, they're perfect, they can do no wrong, or they are the most awful person in the world and everything they do is wrong. There is no in between really, not until you start getting help for the BPD. There's a very well known book for BPD called I Hate You, Please Don't Leave Me, and that's one of the most common phrases with BPD. That's exactly how it feels. One minute you hate the person, the next minute you don't want them to leave. It's a constant swinging back and forth between those two when it comes to relationships. And like I said, it's not just romantic relationships, it can be any sort of relationship. It can be a carer, your mum, your dad, your sisters, brothers, your friends, anybody. It is one of the most difficult things to deal with when you're in any sort of relationship with someone with BPD. And it's about 10 times harder dealing with it as a sufferer of BPD. Because even as I say the words, I hate you, just leave me alone, go away, I don't want to talk to you, I know I'd feel like I'm dying if they did. I want them to stay. And this is largely stemming from a fear of abandonment, which is one of the main causes of BPD, which I will talk about in another video. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talk for the past 15 minutes or so, and I hope the information that I've given you has been helpful. I hope that my experiences as someone with BPD can continue to be helpful to you in the future. Thank you very much for listening.